Here we go. Hi, welcome to Control Talk Now, your smart buildings video cast and podcast for the week ending April 15th, 2018. My name is Eric Stromquist, and I am joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the one, the only Kenny Smyers from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Kenny, how you doing, big dog?
Good. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the get me pumped up here. It's been a crazy, zany week, and we're doing more traveling. We're going to be down in New Orleans here covering the...
By the time you guys are watching this, Kenny and I will be at the Niagara Summit. So
yeah, well, I fly out tomorrow morning, and it's just been whirlwind. We've had incredible weather where we're getting 25 degrees at night, 3 inches of snow to wake up in the morning, goes up to 50 degrees, melts. And today we finally got ourselves a genuine 75-degree day, and I'm so happy. But I cannot even participate with my golf league because it's the wrong day. But you know what? We've got a great guest coming up, Eric, and I'll tell you, the industry is moving so fast. There's so much disruption and blah, blah, blah. We can keep going on and on about how difficult it is. But, you know, one of the most important things that one of the really strong contractor friends and business partners that we have said that he now sees that every time we see this disruptive threat, there's an opportunity. There really is. It's like you guys, you did your martial arts things, and you know how you could take the weight of the opponent and use it against them to throw them down. And that's almost what this is. Or I was watching some of that stuff with the Apollo 1, where they've really mastered how the satellite gets the gravitational pull that could destroy is actually used to the satellite's favor to propel it to the next planet, and so on and so forth. And the attitude was really good, because I really think that's the kind of talk we need to always be, delivering, is that, there are disruptions and there are challenges, and the cheese is moving all over the board, but, keep your nose on the scent, because you can definitely come out of this on both feet, maybe ahead of where you were before the whole thing started.
Well, and like you say, using the martial arts analogy, one of the things in the I Ching is with great chaos comes great opportunity. And you sort of bring east to west, and nothing's obvious to the uninformed. So you got to stay up and stay informed, which is what we're going to be doing, Kenny. Like I said, our guest that's coming on this week is going to keep us up to date. But so what do you say we just bring him on now? We're going to have a short show. Well, it's not going to be a short show. We got a great interview coming up. And so, Kenny, let's just cut straight to it. How about introducing our guest?
Indeed. We have a very special guest. We have the owner-editor of Automated Buildings, Mr. Ken St. Clair, who's he's going to give us some insight into metamorphing mashup. Welcome to the show, Ken.
Hey, whoa, wait a minute. It's Crocodile Dundee Sinclair, because he's also going to tell us about his trip down under. Welcome to the show, Crocodile.
Thank you very much, guys. Good to be back.
Great.
Yeah, let's start off with your trip, buddy. You were on the other side of the world for about a month.
Yeah, that's right. Down visiting my grandson in Melbourne, Australia, and we did a little side trip to Tasmania, which was a lot of fun. So, yeah, good to be back. It's demanding trying to keep up with an 8-year-old and even just get inside of his head.
Yeah, I understand you become the master of a game called footsie, which sounds like something I used to want to do with my dates back in the day.
Yeah. Footy is a way of life down there for sure. You're actually born into a team. He's a bulldog.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. So the biggest kick I got when I went down to the south was where the water actually, because of the gravitational pull, the north were so used to everything going clockwise, and when you go to the southern continents, the water spins the other way. When you wash anything or you flush the toilets, it's interesting to see how the whole world's upside down. And the constellation must be incredible. It's just a beautiful part of the world, huh?
Yeah, I was having a more real problem with that is somehow I just have a terrible time. I can, in my mind, I can reverse north and south. You know, the sun shines in the north, and I somehow that I get that my mind around that. But then I think east and west should be switched, and of course, east and west are constant. And then, of course, the GPS, when you're starting and it doesn't know where you are, it tells you to go down this street north. And I have no idea which way's north. So I have to basically drive until it tells me you're going the wrong way.
And do they drive on the other side of the street down there too?
They definitely do.
Yeah, it's an adventure. Southern Hemisphere.
My daughter had a car with all the fancy alarm, you know, the side alarms and stuff like that. Most of the time, the cars are so close that the alarms are going off all the time.
Yeah,
There's usually a car about 1 inch from your mirrors, and the people, the motorcycles weave in between the streets, and then you've got tram tracks and stuff too, and hook turns, which are unbelievable. So yeah, a lot of moving parts driving.
Good job. Well, you made it back in one piece. That's a good job. That's a great sign.
Well, you did, Ken, but listen, while you were down there, I mean, there's a lot of obviously building automation, innovation going on down under. Did you do any work down there, or was it all play?
Yeah, not too much. My daughter is in an interesting position. She's billed as an entrepreneur disruptor, and she basically buys funding for a very wealthy man. So she is often looking at high technology. She's working in cryptocurrencies. So just trying to understand what she was talking about was great. And we actually went to a seminar together, which was on clean money, which was good fun. So, and of course, she controlled me, trying to get your head into how these kids think. And she's no longer a kid either, but everything came via text screen. So I'd ask what we're doing, and she'd say, "Look at your phone." Because we didn't know what we were doing. It was a moving target, and the texts would roll in telling us where we were to pick up Jackson, how this was all supposed to happen.
Well, good. You got upgraded.
Yeah. And you were down there for IoT Day, weren't you, Ken?
I was, and so we did a recording on the one of the major bridges in Australia, and I used that as a message that the freedom that the Internet of Things gives us, and it was my theme is to have the reverse mentor, to have folks reach out to a younger mentor. And I'm assuming because of that definition that younger mentor, his head is pretty far into the Internet of Things, and that we should, basically learn from that. But what I did point out is it's pretty incredible year for me to see Tasmania, and of course we're off to Helsinki, so we're going to drop in on Iceland. So it's not often folks get to do Tasmania and Iceland in the same few months. So having fun.
Let me tell you something. After seeing this video footage you just put up, we're going to offer you the official Control Trends infield video reporter, because you're going to Helsinki, and I want you to tell the community about that. But we're hoping maybe you'll do some of this great camera work over there and share it with the Control Trends community. So tell us what you're doing in Helsinki.
Actually, the great camera work was only at the length of my arm, so I don't expect too much.
Just stretching exercises, Ken.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not like these kids. They seem to be amazing in what they can produce in a selfie.
Well, I tell you what, I'll make you.
Ken, you need a selfie stick. You need to get yourself one of these bad boys. And then you get some distance.
Otto, I'll make you a deal. If you'll shoot Helsinki footage for us, we will send you a selfie stick.
Okay.
All right. Well, cool. Well, what's going on?
Don't get expensive ones, because you got to always throw them away. You're not allowed to take them into any building where they got security. They're considered some sort of a weapon. You can't take them if they see it on your plane, they take it. So you got to be. So don't buy an expensive one that has the USB connection, the Bluetooth connection. I mean,
and the gun, the weaponry in it, with the self-concealing
with the laser.
I'll buy that one. So, well, what's going on in Helsinki, Ken?
Well, we're off the first part of June to Helsinki, to the Nordic Smart Building convention. We're just starting to put the programs together. It was a little slow coming together, so I was being a little worried, but now it's great. Actually, we've got one of the articles that we wrote, the digital twin and the that bit transparency. We've got that into a discussion. I'm going to be a moderator, and we're going to have a few folks speak to that. We just had our column come online in Contractor magazine about tagging and the importance of that. So we're going to kind of push that into. I've got another one that's an interesting one, and I'd have to pull it up here to read it, but it's the anticipatory portion of how the buildings, all of this is going to fit together. So it looks like an exciting session. One of my first speakers, when I went to his Twitter site, he's talking about an air-conditioned suit, so air-conditioned clothes. So I think we were all kind of flirting around with air-conditioned chairs, and coming out of quite a few of the high-end cars now have conditioning right in the seat, both heating and cooling. So we're starting to see that maybe transferring over into office buildings. But this was the first time I'd seen an actual clothing which kind of looked like protective gear for a motorcycle rider.
Well, Ken, I mean, Kenny, Ken, along those lines, I mean, Google and Levi's have announced that they're coming out with smart clothing. There's you know, to buy jeans and jean jackets that have the Google stuff in it. So,
right, yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting area. I'm looking forward to Helsinki. There's also a very strong human side, like how socially does all of this technology fit, and how do we the mindfulness is. Lawrence is speaking to the mindfulness section of that, and there's some interesting players that are going to be there. I'm looking very forward to learning a whole bunch of new things. I'm very sad that I'm unable to make it to IBCon, but that's.
Well, Kenny and I are going to be at Realcomm IBCon, so I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. You shoot the video footage from Helsinki. We'll shoot the video footage and maybe write an article for you for automated buildings from IBCon Realcomm, and we'll just make sure both our communities get the best of both worlds.
Okay, last year they did a pretty good job of basically validating or basically showing off what they did have, and had some of their discussions, and they put together a tape that kind of did a quick summary and stuff. So I'll forward all that through to you when we're done.
Sounds great. Well, listen, we've missed you for a couple of weeks while you've been down under Crocodile, but there have been a couple of episodes of automatedbuildings.com, which is where all the smart kids in the community go to get informed. And your April issue's out, so let's talk April.
Great. Yeah, it was a bit of a dilemma as to when to put it out, because we're in Australia, and of course we're a day ahead anyway. And so we went up probably online early, and we've added a few pieces since. So it was kind of a little bit scattered, and we didn't end up doing our direct mail out until I think yesterday or something. So it's been scattered, but I think actually it's been a good approach. I think we may evolve to not having so much focus on the month and try and just post stuff as it comes. The big thing with the month is I would never get anybody to actually finish an article if I didn't tell them that it's not going to go in this issue. That's the only clout I have to get them going. Anyway, it's been a good article, or a good issue. The lot of interest. I'm not sure.
Well,
what else I could say about it?
Let's cut straight to it, because Kenny and I, we've talked about a lot. Kenny has loved to use the word mashup. What is it, Kenny? Mashup alliteration? He's loving your list.
Another annoying alliteration, you said, but no, Ken, I get it, because normally we try to pick up on your theme, and normally you have a very specific theme, and you have it all comes to coalescence where you've got different people. And it was kind of synchronistic, I believe you said, because you'd come up with a theme, and all of a sudden all these really right on target articles would come to you, and you would be able to really substantiate themes. So what I think you're doing now is you're saying that it's more of a philosophy, and as people address that with their own individual perspectives, instead of trying to stay tight to a theme, you're putting information, because it's a great article collection. You've got sensing solution for flexible work space, standard semantic tagging, a couple tagging ones, get absolute transparency. OTIT from Mark Peacock was a great one. You had hiring elite controls talent from Skip Freeman, occupancy analytics, which is very good. Another one from James McHale, and show report. I got a kick out of George Thomas, is the contemporary controls owner of Contemporary Controls. George was saying that this show here, he couldn't possibly walk it. If he said he walked it, he wouldn't be telling a true story, because it's the biggest show he's ever seen. 220,000 people visited from 177. It was called the Light and Building 2018, or else the KNX Expo. And then what's your haystack tagging? Of course, another great post from Therese. So Ken, you did a great job of amassing, and I think what we're seeing is that we're getting a lot of interest, and a lot of it used to be kind of esoteric, where only people really in a particular building specialty, building automation, building management. Now we're seeing people from all across, the cross-pollination of engineers, master systems integrators. So I think it's growing, and I wanted to compliment you too that you now have a network that's over 12,890 people, and I mean that's some significant growth. Ken, congratulations.
Yeah, no, I'm very pleased with that, and the globalness of it all is I'm really proud of and really pleased to be part of. And I think the other area that I'm kind of starting to pioneer in, I think, is I'm trying to take our industry into the IoT industry, or take the IoT industry into our industry. I'm trying to be a cross-pollinator there, and there's a lot of action, and so I'm now trying to appeal to different social media groups, and of course I'm part of the IoT Council in Europe, and that has been just an amazing connection, connecting me to an amazing amount of people. And yeah, it's just a lot, as my daughter says, a lot of moving pieces.
Sure.
And trying to keep all of this stuff going. So anyway, it's good. I'm pleased that we're going to be able to take the tagging message to Europe. They're starting to buy into Haystack, but it's still fairly early days for them, although there's several areas that they, of course, are far ahead of us. And again, just getting people to speak to, or write an article to, or even being able to write some of my articles. And the cross-pollination of the Helsinki thing has been amazing. It's not going to be it's not a big conference in comparison to the kinds of things George was talking about, but it's interesting too that that we now have like the other message that George is saying is that for America, there's still a great opportunity to globally sell our works, our wares, and services with some of the stuff that Alper is doing, and the whole this whole mashup, and using Sedona, and of course the metamorphic word came from Alper's post on the Haystack Project Haystack site, and he's calling for his Sandstar, and he was the first guy to use that word metamorphic. But when I actually Googled it, metamorphic is an understood word, and it basically just builds, and it starts to use all of these pieces. And actually that primed me to write the article on tagging, because I hadn't realized how how important the tagging is. We saw some of the advantages of it in the early stage, but the big thing is it allows the naming of all of our devices to uh, be machine read, which is just huge, because once they can be machine read, then you can tell the machine to organize them this way. You can tell the machine to do this. The machine can learn how these bits and pieces go, and it's just another dimension for our industry. And I think Sandstar is certainly the starter kit for that, and it basically inspired the April issue, I guess. The trouble with me now is we're asking me all these questions about the April issue, and my mind's in the May issue. So I'm like, well, I don't know, what was I thinking about a month ago? But that's what I was thinking about. That whole thing came from the Sandstar post on Project Haystack.
Well, I tell you what, while we're talking about Alper a little bit, he is really probably one of the unsung heroes, I think, in our industry, Ken. He's a young gun. He's a younger guy, very innovative. His company, BASSG, just does fantastic work. But, he's not necessarily a great marketeer. I don't mean this in a negative way, but it just means if you haven't had an opportunity to work with him yet or use him, we've turned some integrators on to him, and he's just done a fantastic job. But, shout out to Alper. I mean, he's one of the greats in our industry, I think, and at a very young age.
Actually, a perfect lead in, Eric. At a young age, there's actually two versions of the metamorphic mashup. There's the article I wrote for Contractor magazine, and then on my site, there's an actual review, which is kind of there as well. And what it adds is about 3 or 4 links that aren't in the original article. And it goes back to when we were talking about the history of control languages and how control languages had to change. And Alper spoke to that. And I think that came out of Alper and I meeting at a IBCon probably like about 8 years ago. And so we did that. And then I actually pulled out his original vision from Young Energy at Connectivity Week. I'm not sure the exact date of that, but it's all in that particular review on our site. And when you look at it, you can just see that he's a young gun with history. He's bought in early to Sky Spark. Has worked with Petsy. I think that was an amazing combination, I guess. Or actually, that would be my greatest example of older mentor, younger mentor, John Petsy and Alper. Alper, ties into industry giant like Petsy, and gets what Petsy's talking about, and actually enhances a lot of the stuff Petsy's doing in basically, I think John told me he's the biggest Sky Spark license holder in North America or something like that. Alper is. I think that was, I may be misquoting that, but it's that kind of an idea anyway. Yeah. So anyway, that's I think was what we're always looking for in the industry, is if we can combine those young, bright lights that are changing the industry and connect them to our folks that have helped create our industry. I think it's a great combination.
Well, speaking about young mentors, I think I told you I've got a mentor that I hang out with a lot, Anthony Bronzo. And one of the things we had talked about on a previous episode with you, Ken, was this concept Anthony came up with called just-in-time learning. Whereas, old dogs like us, we tend to start chapter 1, go all the way to the end, right? And Anthony basically, they just figure out what they need to learn. They learn what they need to learn in the moment, and then they go back and they find it. So, as we talked about last time, I think that's important, because as we begin to educate the younger people that are coming in, or even try to mentor them, we have to understand that they are not linear in how they learn. And just recently, Otto and Ken, he turned me on to this guy named Triego Forte. And he's kind of like a time management expert. Now, he's a young guy, he's a millennial, but he thinks about it completely differently. But here's an interesting, very interesting sort of of concept he has, and he uses tags for this. So essentially what he is saying is books are really inefficient ways to learn. There's great information in the books, but they're inefficient primarily because the publishers are asking for X amount of pages. There's a lot of setup. There's a lot of this, and the stuff you need to really get out of it is maybe 20% of it, right? So he's developed sort of a note-taking system using digital stuff like, Kindles or whatever, and using something like Evernote. And essentially you can join this group, guys, and basically you can read a chapter of a book, and he's got very specific ways on how you call out what's important in the book and usable. And like you can do a chapter, and he's got these groups. So if you give, then you get access to the rest of the book that somebody else has gone through using this technique. So at the end of the day, you can have hundreds and hundreds of books that have just the information that you can use in it. So I thought that was kind of fascinating, this whole concept of collaborative learning, and the fact that they're basically just saying, hey, books are kind of inefficient. They're great, but they're inefficient.
Yeah, I think that's said in a different way as in some of the articles that our other young gun wrote, Brad White. He wrote a lot of articles about Agile and Scrum Masters and that whole thing, which is basically a whole hierarchy of how you do business now. And it's radically changed their business because they were running into the same problem. It's just all these technologies flying by. How do you actually deal with them all? And the only way you can do it is come at it what they call an agile approach. And you have to basically, for each project or for each thing you're doing, you basically appoint a Scrum Master, and the Scrum Master basically administers how we will agilely basically pull together this project. What do we really need? And then he identifies the players who go out and get the agile pieces. So yeah, it's a new way of thinking for sure.
Well, Ken, let's talk a little bit about, Haystack. Where do you think it is sort of in the evolution of being adopted universally by all the controls companies? And what do you think the headwinds are? And do you ever see this being just completely, part of the fabric of smart building controls?
Yeah, I think it's. I'm pretty proud and amazed of the Haystack group. They've done an amazing job of bringing this thing from zero to something pretty amazing in a short period. The latest one, of course, was the announcement of BACnet to basically support it, plus the brick schema. And
whoa, hang on a second now. The brick schema. I'm not sure I'm familiar with that one.
Okay. Now we got.
Wait a second. Didn't Therese write something about that isn't it on automated buildings? The April issue. Didn't Therese write something about that?
Right, and I kind of pull it all together in my tagging article that's just went online the other day for Contractor Magazine. It actually provides a link to it, and it tells you how it fits with Haystack. So it basically, in some ways, maybe in simplistic terms, it helps organize all of these tagging bits. So it puts all the tagging bits into a schema. All these words are a little strange to us, but they're very common to people who have worked with HTML. Meta tags, you start seeing all of this stuff that it's basically their language. These are internet words. These are code HTML words, and schema, meta tags. So basically it's a method of organizing some of the tags. Is probably the simplest way it can be said.
Well, Ken, I just got a text from your daughter from Australia. She says, Dad, use the share screen function. Don't make me text you.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, here we go.
Got it.
Okay, so this is from Teresa's and I's interview. So I think that just in one, a picture's always worth 1,000 words. So there we've got the hierarchy of a building, and then we've got how that kind of looks in Haystack tagging, and then you start to see in the brick schema. So it's more or less a text description of what some of this stuff is and how it's going to come together. I'm not an expert in it. But the fact that we're looking at basically latching into existing standards. And the bigger thing is that BACnet has committed to bring these two pieces, haystack and brick, into their mashup is great. And I think there's some underlying strengths there too, is we, after several years of working with a cut and paste consultant, we finally got him to cut and paste BACnet into his specification. He still doesn't know what it is, but he puts it in there. And because he's going to keep doing that, the inference is that he's just cut and paste haystack and brick into his specifications. The younger consultants, the new involving consultants, and the master systems integrators understand the power of all of this. So they're working with a sophisticated owner, and they're looking for this mashup to occur, and they're basically pushing the mashup as far as they can. That will speed the evolution of the cut and paste consultant, because he will actually end up getting a better project just based on that. Do you want me to stop sharing that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's really cool. Yeah,
Okay.
nice.
Okay. So yeah, so that's in the article. If give you a link to that, we can maybe attach to this as well, this reading notes, because when I wrote this, the April issue, the metamorphic mashup, as I was working on that issue, this tagging article came out. It was an interesting thing because it was almost backwards. I mean, we've been talking about tagging forever, and it gave me a whole new, oh my God, this tagging is not only nice to have, it is essential. It's mandatory for us to move ahead. We have to move everything to tagging. And if stuff just can't, if we can create this stuff, if we can create it, which is Internet things, if we can, I use the visual, what we call it? Yeah. Basically the visualization of all of this, Internet things. If we don't use tagging, we can create these things, but if we'll never be able to find them again, and worse yet, machines won't be able to find them. So the tagging is really the only way we're going to move ahead, and we're going to put this information into the hands of machines so they can build it, they can learn from it, they can do all of that. It has to have an identity, has to have a tag. I hadn't seen that as clear as I think I do now, is that's mandatory. It's just, we've got to tag.
So it's supposed to be like the electricity or the current that flows through the system.
Well, the thing is that you guys got such Project Haystack is clearly the future, and the different stratifications of how technology is implemented. In certain parts, I think Project Haystack has already been adopted, and the wisdom of using it is already widely accepted. It's the difficulties that we're facing, and we don't, and I think the world is divided up into markets, and markets are stratified too, so that when you're working with these enlightened consultants, engineers, they really need the benefit of BACnet adopting it and pushing it. They really need the benefit of ASHRAE supporting it, because the adoption rate is just not, it's not even across the board to make any, to use it to your benefit yet. So we're working with a bunch of esoteric, we work with some master systems integrators that got it. We know about Alper, and we endorse his products, and that's how we're getting involved in Haystack and supporting it. But I think it's just, it's a shame that it takes so long to get something so important accepted and almost like in a state of compliance with the major people that could change it overnight. If you had the top 5 control companies in the world, if you had certain software companies in the world, adopting it, my goodness, this thing could be, it could be underway in a matter of years, 2-3 years. We'd all be using it and benefiting from it.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of resistance from the majors because again, all of this open standards tend to level the playing field, and
Right.
they don't want a level playing field. Another thing I think in this tagging article is that's on your screen right now.
Yeah. So this is one you wrote for Contractor Magazine, Ken?
Yeah, I just want to read my bit from the bottom here because I think that's significant. Down at the end here is that so I say, I hope this column helps you understand that tagging is not a just nice to have feature, but a mandatory part of future-proofing our IT creations. It's just one case of these, just in case one of these standards is not correct, the creator can always leave enough space to retag to a different one. If it is machine readable, there's plenty of space to work with, and best of all, near completely flexible for how IT will be used. I think in the past, we've always created these points and we thought we knew what they were going to be used for. I think the bottom line is we have no earthly idea what all of these virtual points we create and real points will actually be used for, because there's just apps that are being evolved daily. So again, this whole...
Yeah, and not only that, Ken, is, and I think you interviewed and we interviewed Dr. Igor Mezic, a couple of years ago. He had the self-learning algorithm, right? So, and his premise was, just give me the sensor data or the data points, and the algorithm will learn it and figure out the correlations and figure out how to optimize things. So, I think by connecting everything together like you're proposing, it really allows something like that to become possible.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the realization, I guess, I came with as well. And I'm actually going to write a blog bit for the Helsinki stuff and tie it into the transparency and digital twin
Nice
bits and pieces too, because that's all of it. Actually, when you start thinking about this, a lot of the stuffs we've been saying almost takes on a stronger light. Again, I think we were just looking at it as tagging. It's not just tagging. It is basically giving every piece of information an identity, and an identity that can be found, that can
Great.
be
Yeah.
controlled.
right. Well, it's enabling, it's empowering. It is a lot more than just connecting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. So yeah, and there's this whole softer side is now coming out of all of this data too. This is what I'm trying to get my head around. I don't profess to understand any of this stuff I'm talking about, but I'm trying to I'm trying to pull all these pieces together, and I think my goal is to get some of this stuff in front of the people that understand.
It's working, Ken. It's working. Don't give up the say not the struggle, not avail. That was a poem we had to do once upon a literature class, and it was about the difficulty of the struggle, but the struggle makes everything better, and it illuminates, it elucidates, it brings people's attention on a very particular idea. And some of these controversial movies and books do the same thing. Even if you only have your own opinion, you wouldn't be involved in it unless something caught your attention. So I think what you're doing catches a lot of attention. It makes people decide, do they understand it? Do they want to be involved in it? Do they accept the importance that you're making the pronouncement of? And I think because the spec game is very interesting. I just had a chance to review two specifications that came out this year by some people. And the first thing I do is I hit Control F, and then I type in project haystack, tagging, semantics, or whatever, and it's almost absent from these brand new specifications that are being pushed out by different people, that it annoyed me to the point where I wrote an offline email to you that kind of just it was like going back a step. Instead of stepping forward a good daddy long leg step, we went back a half a step, because like you said, when you level the playing field and people's markets get affected, they don't want to, they don't go unless, like John Petsy said, unless they're forced to by the will of the user. And that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's definitely what changed it. And again, I wrote a response to that, and I told you about the early days of BACnet, and I got to admit that I'll fess up that in the early days of BACnet, I was not a supporter of BACnet. It took me a long time to actually fully understand the benefits of it, because it was one of the first open movements that we had. So,
Interesting.
but once we moved through, well, what I was worried about actually, and this is another side of this puzzle, is as a young consultant, I was worried that BACnet would kill innovation, because I had companies that were using their own protocols, but were creating some pretty clever stuff, and I didn't want to lose them, and I was a little worried. But in the final analysis, it did weed out a lot of the fringe players, but by the same token, it certainly made the independents a lot stronger. And so what happened there is the majors did not want to accept BACnet. They fought it. They would actually bid a job with BACnet, and then they would offer the client a credit if they did not use BACnet. And why would they do that? They did that because they wanted to tie up the service contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually they were negative sellers of BACnet for several years. Then what happened is the independents started taking a very large market share, with especially with universities and stuff, once they started moving over with hospitals where they had sophisticated owners. Sophisticated owners wanted it to be open. So then the independents started to grow, and the likes of Delta and Tritium and Allerton and all these folks, they actually grew, and they became painful to the majors. And then the majors said, okay, we got to do something about this. We'll buy them. And then the observation was there's too many of them to buy. Can't buy them all. So they basically had to change. But most of the majors at that point, the reason that they never did have BACnet infrastructure in their products, they basically bought companies that had BACnet in their products. I believe that history will repeat itself, and the young folks and the young companies that are basically pushing Haystack and making it an integral part of their product will eventually be bought by the majors, the ones that they wish to, and we'll see where that goes. But there's another movement here that is scary for these majors, and that is that the IT folks are starting to fall on top of us, and we're starting to collaborate with them. And some of these IT folks are, of course, bigger than the control companies. We've never had that situation. They've always been the big kids on the block, and they could bully anybody into doing anything. But that's not going to happen anymore, because now, Microsoft Johnson, that's a strange bedfellow combination going on there. We've got, Google is building a formidable platform, as is Amazon. These companies are going to have a big play in the control industry, and that's why I'm spending so much time taking our information and sharing it on IoT social media to get cross feedback and to for everything to move.
Well, to your point, Ken, Honeywell is selling their residential division, and it's because of what you just said. Because the big boys in town now they're going to take over the residential market first, and they're going to get that home, the voice activated, total control, lights, audio, whatever first, and then they're going to slide right over to the building space.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and everybody's fighting for that home market too. Like, I just got a new cell phone here, and that was one of the boxes you check. Do you want home automation and stuff? And it's like, you got to be kidding. Not, you can imagine I got more home automation than anybody.
We don't have time to talk about this now because I know you got to run, but you probably didn't get a chance to hear last week's show where we talked about the April 1st post about the iStat that's supposedly coming out April 1st, 2020. So you might want to listen to that. One of the features of that, it takes a little different approach than the human element. It takes a different approach than comfy, comfy or whatever. This one has like tough mode, or so if you say turn the heat up, because voice activated. They based it on a lot of what you were saying apparently, and it'll say, "Don't be a wimp.
Put a sweater
Go
on.
get a sweater. Go get a sweater. Save some energy. Toughen
Buck
up,
up,
toughen up." So that's one of
tough
the
up,
mode selections you can do.
suck
But
it
if you
up,
need to be
buttercup.
politically correct, you can quick it down and go nurturing mode, and it'll say, "Now come on, Otto, it's okay." But you should definitely check that out. We'd love to get your opinion on the effect we think the iStat will have coming out April 1st, 2020. You have to listen to last week's episode to pick up on that.
To do that. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Actually, the other thing that's fed into that too is there's a lot of work being done in the emotion of voice. We were, a few months ago, we were talking about, voice slipping into all the products, but now they're starting to know it can sense when you're frustrated and do a different reaction. I mean, if you're just saying, I want to stop talking, just turn the heat up, I don't want to talk about it, it'll turn the heat up and not and let itself out of the negotiation. So anyway, yeah, interesting stuff for sure.
Well, as always, it's been keep us going, Ken. Keep us on top of technology, and let us know all these comets and meteorites coming at us from all these different directions of IoT and IT in particular, because I think that's where the collisions are occurring. They used to be direct frontals, and now they're not. They're laterals. They're coming from the side, and you can't see them because our vision's been trained to stay focused on the front, and then
I think another thing we should talk about too is like the financing of all of this stuff, is that the business models are so different and in some ways, fragile as we're moving ahead. I'm not sure if you've heard, but Lindsay Baker has left Comfy, as has the CEO, and as has Drew. So major people leaving Comfy. Might be a good topic to have a chat with
wow.
Therese on, because Therese has a bit of information on that. Uh, so it's, the problem is we got good ideas, we kind of move them ahead, but if the financiers or people with the venture capitalists are not getting what they expect because they don't well understand our industry, you're Ken, you said you're frustrated watching how slow Haystack is going. You can imagine a venture capitalist trying to figure out how come you can't turn this industry around in
Sure. I mean, Comfy is a great example of what, that, in other words, the idea and the end zone was presented first, and then they try to reverse engineer that all the way back into, like a business model and a business plan. And they found out that our industry is so difficult, and so there's so many headwinds, and there's so much pushback because of the other people protecting their piece of the pie. But the concept was magnificent. It was just that it couldn't. You've got to go across so many different bridges where people can put the stop sign up, or at least make it hard for you, and at least put an impediment that you've got to go up or around. And so I think that's the warning of the big players, the guys that can push majors around, because they don't have any rules. All they do is they flood. They take all the options away by giving you one option, and they can enforce it with the money. Amazon, for instance, and Google and Facebook, and
Well, but yeah, and I think Ken, though, Kenny, as I think this is where automated buildings, Controltrends, Realcomm, Ibicon, and those conferences are critical, because at the end of the day, nobody pushes the user around. When the users get educated, that and start saying, "Hey, enough, we're going to do it this way," that's when it all changes. So.
Okay, another piece I want to add, because it is a big piece and it's falling on us rapidly too, is this whole concept that the lighting industry will control the network because their new lighting products are DC powered, and they basically become the logical place to place routers, Bluetooth repeaters, and so I think it's not a hard stretch to say that in a new building, the be a smart building management system will basically feed a lot off of the lighting. And so that's another platform. So really what's going on is sort of platform wars. Is you've got your Acuity just dropped something, can't remember the exact name of it, but then Philips has got something going. I've been tweeting about 3 or 4 of the lighting companies that are basically coming up with significant platforms. Also, by definition, the light needs power, so they basically have to run power to all these lights. And once it has power, then it can power any number of wireless devices. And then we start seeing that occupancy sensing and geospace fencing and all of those things start to become a logical thing to get added to the light. And then, of course, the other inference in the future is Li-Fi, in the fact that Li-Fi, they may in fact turn the Wi-Fi metrics into Li-Fi and basically start using light instead of radio waves. So, you know, we're starting to see that in street lighting. They're starting to see strong, when you start look at the smart city markets, there's just some amazing stuff going on there. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces.
To your point, George Thomas reported that the one of the things that caught his eye was that Delta Controls in a new product called the O3 Room Controller. Instead of having multiple sensors with a room to confirm the room is occupied, it had one large ceiling-mounted sensor with multiple sensing modes that included temperature, light, and sound. So, you know, everything you said, it's already productized. And Eric and I saw a presentation where this building out in California, it was all PoE. And they were taking incredible abilities to sustainable energy, take them to a very large battery, which Johnson Controls is now making, so that the building has this car-sized battery in the bottom of it that all these wind turbines and you know, the photovoltaic, basically your sun you know, energy solutions are feeding these batteries that are charging, and then they're feeding out the PoE, you know, the 24 volts DC or whatever, and that's taking care of all your subsystems. So the technology is there. It's just amazing how it's going to actually, who's going to win, who's going to be endorsed by the bigs, and then, you know, how do we, where does that impact our industries? Hopefully we'll be riding that wave on the right side.
Yeah, actually, just some quick chats with Brad, as he's he pointed out that in a lot of this, they're working closer with the owner to become sort of a closer, stronger relation. The consultant has a closer, stronger relationship with the owner, and because in the final analysis, they're making risk decisions on these new technologies. And so they really have to, it's almost like betting on horses. This is an amazing idea, is it going to make it or not? And so where I think simplistically, the majors see us just, you know, I'm going to come up with this great idea and everybody's going to buy it. That is not going to happen. What's going to happen is we basically all work inside of our network of trusted advisors, and it's all getting so complex and moving so fast. When you find somebody that you think they know what they're doing, you basically attach yourself to them and you seek their advice. So I think that's more the model. The other thing in the basic implementation of how BACnet's going to become, how Haystack is going to become as strong as BACnet, is it will happen as these new companies endorsing completely Haystack and maybe even moving to the next level of metamorphing type controls such as Alper's talking and Sandstar. These innovative companies are using the Raspberries and Beagle boards, which really look a lot like microprocessors did in my day. I mean, I was moving from mini computers to microprocessors,
the cost and scale and speed and how far out towards the edge we could deploy them was rapidly changing, and it rapidly changed the industry. We're exactly back at that same point right now, that these little raspberries are a platform that allows that to occur. So it's just a lot of moving pieces for sure.
Well, there you have it. And I think, Ken, at the end of the day, it's, you got to stay informed. If you want to be that trusted resource, you got to keep up with what's going on. So, and you guys do a great job. AutomatedBuildings.com. Ken Sinclair, Ken Crocodile Sinclair has been our guest this week. Ken, we appreciate you very, very much as always. And we'll get you back on in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll do the May issue. We'll get it going, and we'll keep tracking what's going on.
Great. Good time.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day, Ken.
Bye, guys.
Okay, Kenny Smyers, man, that was Ken Sinclair, AutomatedBuildings.com. You and I are both headed down to New Orleans. And like I said, by the time you're watching this, Kenny and I will be in New Orleans. We'll be updating you from the Niagara Summit.
Looking forward to that. Well, Eric, you know what? I really got a kick out of it. We came out of this with 3 new words again. You know, every time we come up, you know, we got the majors now, we got the bigs, and we've got tech latching. So according to Ken Sinclair, we got to find our closest trusted mentor and latch onto them, at least as far as it makes sense. The bigs being the Googles, the Amazons, and then the majors being the top control companies. So we got the majors, the bigs, and what a interesting way to end the show. That, you know, again, the thing we're going to, Niagara Summit, is literally going to update us on one of the most enriching, I called it the aquifer of technology, and how we had, you know, everybody's been involved in Niagara, whether they realize it or not now at this point, this many years down the road, since 1998, I believe. And the OEMs, you know, they dig into the strong, deeper aquifer and produce the Niagara products that make their customer sets happy. And we as distributors, you know, we sell, you know, Niagara. And so we're accessing that technology aquifer from a different point. And then, of course, the integrators and the master systems integrators, and even the users, the large users that have the access. But I'm looking forward to it. And they've got a lot of really interesting, exciting things for us. Oh, and by the way, it's in New Orleans.
Yeah. So, Kenny, if we get caught in jail, we just need somebody from the Controltrends community to come bail us out. But we're looking forward to that. So, Kenny Smyers, get on your horse and ride. I'll get on mine. I'll see you in New Orleans, and we'll be reporting next week, giving you updates from the Niagara Summit. So, with that, a very, very special thanks to our guest this week, Ken Crocodile Dundee Sinclair from AutomatedBuildings.com. Be sure to check that out. And we appreciate you guys tuning in. So have a great week. Be bold, stay in control, and stay low.
Indeed, Eric.
Indeed, Kenny Smith.